Welcome to Saturday's Warrior. This is a historic show for us tonight for a couple reasons. First of all, it's our first ever live show. And for all of the subscribers or anyone who is returning to the channel, thank you and welcome back. For any of the newcomers, welcome. This channel, we talk all things college football, primarily BYU, Big 12, and a lot of conference realignment. Which we will get to more of tonight and talking about the Big 12 potentially expanding to the Pacific Northwest. So if you are interested in any of those things, which I imagine you are, if you are here, please be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you get reminders, do all the things. It really helps us a lot. But also, please comment, be part of the conversation, join in with us tonight. That's why we do this, is to include people and get the conversation rolling. So that brings us to the second point, why this is historic. I've got two huge guests joining me tonight, and I'm really grateful to have them. They are both, really, two people that I watch their shows and really enjoy their stuff and aspire to put out stuff as good as theirs. So I'm really grateful to having them on. So without any further ado, I would like to bring them on and introduce them. Now, we did have a little bit of a discussion, somewhat of coming from different angles tonight. So kind of got a fight night atmosphere going on. No, not really. This is going to be all pleasantries, but so let's see here. In the first corner, weighing in at 6.38 thousand subscribers, serving up shots of top shelf football content, hailing from the country roads of West Virginia, from Couz's Corner, we have Justin Couz Walker.
Man,
Welcome,
thank you.
Couz.
Thank you for that intro. I didn't deserve that, man, but thank you.
And in the other corner, we have, weighing in at 3.19 thousand subscribers in only a few short months, we have the BYU man looking to give a voice to all fan bases. Yes, even Utah fans. From the Big 12 Mafia and Holy Rival shows, we have Nathan Bomber Brown.
Oh man, I love this. I watched Mike Tyson when I was in high school, and I love the Let's Get Ready to Rumble. So this is great. I appreciate, Trevor, the invitation to do this, and I support all your efforts. And Couz, it's great to see you again.
Absolutely.
I'm not near as well put together as Couz is, so I just hope I can carry my end.
Well, no, I really appreciate it, both of you, for joining me. And I already knew my background was very sparse, but now in comparison with you guys on here, it's making me look really bad. So I gotta some redecorating. But yeah, so a little bit of context. I'm sure everybody is well aware, but so we all know there's been tons of realignment going on all summer. And going into the college football season, there's two schools left in the pack. We got Washington State and Oregon State, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. And with the college football season, I really hadn't done a lot of realignment. So I'd actually listened to, a lot of content that I need to get back on this. So I invited Mafia here to join me on my show to do an overview on the topic and everything that's been going on that I'd missed in my videos. And that same day, shortly after we posted, Couz here posted a video talking about some of the discussion going around about the Locked On Big 12 video with Immaculate that started a lot of controversy, just talking about the possibility of these remaining two PAC schools joining the Big 12 and whether it was or was not still a possibility. And so there's tons of discussion. So that wasn't even my intent to get in the middle of all that, but we happened to post at the same time that this stuff was going down. And so I thought this would be a perfect time to bring these guys together and kind of hash it out. Obviously, cordially, I want to keep hits above the belt, guys. And most importantly, thick skin. You got it? Check. All right. So, yeah,
my
that's
guy,
right.
Golden Blue dude.
That's right. So,
Thank you for
no,
that.
I'm
Thank you for
kidding.
that ode to him, man.
Yeah. So,
Absolutely.
I don't know if it was intentional, but it works.
absolutely. But yeah, no, you guys are two very cordial people. I'm not worried about that. But so yeah, to kick us off, I know Mafia, you had a little bit that actually, sorry, I gotta come down out of full screen here and add the screen. You wanted to you got a little bit here to provide some context for
Right.
viewers.
Yeah, just really quick, I'll just run through this. So I got on Twitter actively right after UCLA and USC was announced to the big. So I can kind of track all of my sort of everything that I've looked at this back to that moment. And so I put together a timeline really quick. This is just my perception. Kuz can run through his. But it started with UCLA, USC. Bob Thompson immediately came out with a Pac-12 valuation that says, I think they're worth about $30 million. We found out later that's exactly what they were worth. And then in July, Tony Altomore announces that no Pac-12 schools are going to the Big 12 ever. And then I put a little joke there at the end because intellect, because of course they're all smarter than the rest of us. We jump ahead through all the white noise over winter and then the off season. Nothing really happened, right? It was like what they called the Sitzkrieg War right before World War II really kicked off, where Britain and France just sat back and didn't do anything. They didn't invade Germany at all, and they just let Germany pick apart the rest of Europe. So April 2023 comes around. I meet up with Wild Ute. We decide to put a show together. And I think it was the first or second show we came out and we said, hey, look, one of the groups that's really being undervalued and not talked about is Washington State, Oregon State. And we started advocating for them to get into the Big 12. We said if everybody else comes, they shouldn't be left on their own. From that point forward, we had more time go by, more shows, more things happened, but nothing really changed the dynamics until obviously late July, early August, we had Colorado move. And then obviously Utah, Arizona State all went to the Big 12 in sort of one fell swoop, right? So that happened at the beginning of August. Right after that, we did another show that we proposed they should leverage the resources of the Pac-12. This is before the lawsuit. They should leverage those resources and try to buy their way in, buy quotes, meaning access, whatever it would take to get into the Big 12. And that could be a way to get around some of the limitations that it would take for them to get into the conference, because they kept saying we're not going to expand again. And then at the end of the month, when the first college football playoff meeting was delayed, Immaculate View then right after that, or maybe right before, I can't remember the timing exactly by the day, but he comes out and says, look, Kirk Schultz sits on the college football playoff committee. He basically represents what is now a two-school Pac-12, and his vote can delay everything in the college football playoff dynamics. They can't renegotiate. They can't add teams. They can't do anything. And so Immaculate's idea was, which I thought was brilliant, his key was that he could use that to leverage those negotiations to get into the Big 12, saying, you let us into the Big 12 gets something from everybody else. I don't know whether that's additional games, maybe an additional team would come from the conference when they would put these ladders together. I don't know what it would be, but that was the idea. He would use that as leverage. And then just today, there were the two announcements. I'm sure you're going to get to them. First was Gonzaga. I'm not going to mention that one. But the second one, late this afternoon, there was a note put out by Bob Thompson that says they're now mediating the Pac-2, Pac-12 negotiations. It's now in mediation. So it's no longer an active lawsuit. They're in front of a mediator, and wow, all of a sudden now you've had things break loose. Yes, no, Gonzaga. Oh, wait, maybe we'll just take Washington State, Oregon State, and quit causing trouble.
Awesome. Thank you for that rundown. And I had actually missed that tweet. So I guess that's what's great about going on live here. So awesome. So what do you think, Mafia, makes this different, than the other schools? I mean, the Big 12 has said that they are not interested, that they are done. Right. And then there's new news that comes out, about Gonzaga. So what really makes it different with these schools and that they're not being considered?
It all has to do with that lawsuit. They look, the other A4 conferences, let's name them, the Big Ten, the SEC, the ACC, and the Big 12, don't want two schools that used to be a power school just wallowing out there, because they can cause trouble for the next 3 years. In the college football playoff, they will keep their vote. So they're not going away. So they need to end that. That needs to go away. And in my opinion, and others' opinions, the way to do that is you subsume them into the Big 12 through some negotiated means. And then this new mediation that's been announced today that might take a month, Bob Thompson said, that would then disperse the Pac-12 assets to all 12 schools before they leave, and the Big 12 gets 2 new schools. Whether Gonzaga comes or not, look, they used Yormark used Gonzaga as a leveraging tool in February. They said, "Hey, look, you better watch out. We are going to maybe take Gonzaga and UConn basketball. Watch out." Well, what happened? Only 4 Pac-12 schools came, and Gonzaga never happened. So why couldn't that happen again?
No, that's a great point. They've been pretty adamant, though, that they're not looking to expand anymore. And, Yormark has always said he doesn't like doing things in the shadows. He wants to be very forthright. He was clear that he was looking to expand the first time around. So when he says he's not looking to expand this time, should we not take him at his word?
I think it's a negotiating tactic. I don't think no is never no in a negotiation. That's my opinion. Mm-hmm. But I know Coos disagrees. So.
Yeah, I mean, slightly. All of that is. I'm not saying none of this is impossible. I mean, Immaculate's analogy. I mean, if you sit back and look at it, it's all possible. Any of it can happen. So for the folks out there who are saying this is not going to happen ever, I won't go to that extreme, okay? Because I don't never say never. And the only thing, but as far as the Big 12 goes, I mean, I do agree with Trevor. He has said multiple times that he does things in the open. Now, there are certain things you can't say, okay? And I understand that, because it could either A, kill the negotiation, or B, there could be legal issues like Nathan mentioned, like Bomber mentioned there. But in this case, I think there's more to it than the lawsuit. Yes, the lawsuit's there, but I think there's also, from what I've read and heard, the Big 12 does not want to add Washington State and Oregon State because the money's not there to add them. And the reason I say the money's not there is because they can't bring anybody in, a school that has football schools. They don't want to bring in other Power 5 football schools and not give them a full share, because they feel it could cause problems down the road, right? Because it would be an unequal revenue sharing type model, and they don't want to go down that path because it could cause future issues. Right. And with Gonzaga, if this story is true and accurate, them being basketball only, they're not going to expect a full share anyway, so it might be a different conversation, right? I think that's why Gonzaga is a different conversation maybe than the Washington State, Oregon State schools are. And I know that. Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I know Immaculate's got this. If they win their lawsuit, I know that the argument is they'll get all this, hundreds of millions of dollars. I just don't see that happening. I don't think it makes any sense to give 2 schools $320 million. I'll be honest with you. And I just don't see them ever getting that. They might settle and get some of it, but I don't see them getting the entire thing. So that's just so therefore the money may not be there to add those 2 schools for a full share.
Coos brings up the good point that I did in my timeline, I did miss, and that is that part of the story is the money would come from ESPN because they own the 2/3 to 1/3 share versus Fox. Fox has already said they're not given new money to any new schools, but the 2/3 share would be paid by ESPN, and Gonzaga would be the cherry on top. Meaning, right now, ESPN basically owns Gonzaga. That wherever they go, they make all the money off of them, right? So the idea would be you bring in Gonzaga as a concession to ESPN to get them playing Kansas, to get them playing Kansas State and Baylor and Houston. And in trade for doing that, we will give you the funding for bringing in Washington State and Oregon State.
So do you guys, I mean, to Coos, to your point, talking about the negotiations, to what Bomber was saying, do you not think that could be something that they could use? Say, hey, we're holding things up. And, maybe we won't get everything, but we're going to drag this out and make this as painful as possible for everyone so we can get as much as we can out of this. Don't you think that could be part of using that leverage to wind up into a conference?
I think it's possible, but I think it would be a terrible move because you're going to piss off everybody else in the Power Five and everybody, even maybe some group of 5 people if you hold up this process. And I just don't. I mean, he's at risk of blackballing himself. You got to remember, and this is something I brought up to Mackie the other night on my show. If he goes into that room and plays hardball and refuses to give in to anything, they've got to find teams to play in the next 2 years.
Right.
And if I'm in that room and he does that to me, you know what I'm going back and telling my AD? Do not schedule a game against Washington State.
And I think that will happen. What Kuz says is there's no way. That's why this has to end. That's why this negotiation that's been announced today is the end. It's the end we've been talking about since the end of July, 1st of August.
Right.
There's no way they were going to let 2 schools, besides the $320 million payout, which is just a ludicrous number, they're going to split that 12 ways. They'll negotiate a settlement, but then something has to give. And that give would be Kirk Schultz would now be in a conference and his vote would no longer exist. So he would no longer be a barrier to the negotiations on the College Football Playoff Committee.
See, I see it. I see it ending differently. I see it ending with Kirk Schultz. I see it as, okay, Kirk Schultz, here's what we're going to let you do. We're going to let you keep the Pac-12 assets, keep the Pac-12 brand, and you can absorb the Mountain West into the Pac-12 and that make that a Power 5 league. I see that being a more likely ending here.
They don't want another Power 5 league though, Kuz. It splits the playoff money. They want an A4. They don't want another Power 5 conference. Do they?
I don't know. I mean, it could be a concession that they could give them.
You're bringing in 12 more mouths to feed that would be technically at a power level. I mean, does New Mexico deserve to receive power money?
The Pac's already a power level. You're not costing anybody any money.
No,
you're just preventing them from making more money.
I'm talking about the Mountain West. I'm talking about you bringing in the Mountain West into the Pac-12. You said you let them stay. The concession would be the Pac-12 keeps the assets. Those 2 schools run it, but they bring in these 12 new schools or 10, whatever's in the Mountain West. So now you're adding 10 more mouths into the Pac-12 into the power leagues.
And you have the Pac-12 again. What's the difference?
The difference is you're adding 10 more teams.
The Pac-12 had 12 teams.
Yeah, but those teams were already power league schools.
I don't know that. I don't think that. Why does that matter?
Let's do
the number. The number's the number.
Let's do a math problem. Right now, there's 4 leagues that have 16. Is it 18 in the Big now? There's 18 in the Big. There's how many in the ACC? Is it 14? And
it's going to be 17 if you count Notre Dame.
Okay, that's
or 18.
Right,
18.
Right,
I'm sorry,
right.
18.
And then you add the SEC. So those 4 by themselves adds up to what? Around 72 or 73 schools, right? With Notre Dame. Why would you want to add another 10 schools? Because that just thins out the money distribution to the rest of the schools that are in the playoff league. They don't want to make New Mexico. They don't want to make San Diego State power schools just by default, just to keep one rump of a conference alive. Is it possible? Absolutely. What Kuz proposes, I would never say never. If Realignment has taught us anything, nobody should ever say never.
Well,
right?
Same thing about
Tony Altimore. He said never.
Right. Well, I won't do that. And I'm not saying that's likely to happen either. I just see that to me, that's more likely than them going to the Big 12 right now.
Why would you would rather bring in 10 new schools into the power?
Not
power
rather.
Leagues
It's not my preference. It's what I think has a more likelihood to happen.
Okay.
It's not my preference necessarily. I'm just looking at it from I'm trying to look at it from a negotiation and business, give and take scenario. I just don't see the appetite for the Big 12 to add them. To be honest with you,
what's stopping it? What's the big stopping point to joining the Big 12?
The money. They don't have the money to do it. I mean, if they don't have the money to give them $31.7 million,
the league doesn't, but ESPN does.
ESPN's not doing too great right now, man. They're not.
Well, and ESPN's making money.
Yeah, but why would they want to do that? The pro rata says that pro rata says they have to be power schools, right?
Then they are power schools. Yeah.
But that agreement is only with ESPN. Fox
Right,
does
and
not have the pro rata agreement.
Yeah, I just said that, Coos. I
Right.
mentioned that. Right.
So that means if Fox doesn't agree to it, that means they're only getting $20 million.
Right.
That's not a full share.
It isn't. I'm not proposing they get a full share.
Because wouldn't it also
I don't think the Big 12 would bring them in without it.
Wouldn't it be cheaper for ESPN to bring them in than to elevate 10 other schools, even if they're only paying them 15 or 20? You know, if they're paying them even a lesser amount to go to the pack, wouldn't that still be cheaper than just, or more expensive than just adding 2 more schools to the Big 12?
Can you repeat that question, please?
Yeah, sorry. Wouldn't it still be cheaper to bring in 2 more schools to the Big 12 if you're ESPN than to pay a whole new conference and saying that the Mountain West moving into the pack?
It'd be cheaper. Absolutely would. Yeah.
Money. So, do they have the incentive to do that? And if so, why did they shell out so much money to pay all these other pack schools to go to other conferences, kind of in a piecemeal?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would be cheaper. You're right. I'm not saying that adding the Mountain West would be the cheapest way to go, but again, it might end up being a concession for them keeping the Pac-12 brand alive, which is from everything I've read is what they want to do. So,
as an alternate, I think they want to do it as an alternate to joining another power league. I don't think they want to keep those 2 schools. I've talked to a ton of Oregon State and Washington State people on Twitter and on my show, and I haven't met one yet that says they'd rather be the Pac-12 rather than joining the Big 12.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a whole different conversation, but the way Utah fans have been acting on Twitter lately, I say we just kick Utah out and bring one of those schools in, make the call of the day.
Okay, well, that's a different show. We could bring in Ute for that, and frankly, might not disagree with you. He might not disagree with you.
I like Ute, but man, the rest of their fans are obnoxious. Good Lord.
Yeah, I ran into some trouble over the weekend. I'm sure you saw it. There are some really. Sorry, I got personally attacked a few times, and I was
trying to bring some comedy into the situation.
It was a good joke. It was a good joke.
Hey, you need to be nice to each other, but you can make fun of Utah fans on my show. That's all right.
Hey, Wild Ute's awesome, man. I love him to death. But
yeah, he is. No, I'm kidding. My dad.
This is how bad it was this weekend. I don't know if you saw it Saturdays, but I got attacked so bad and in such a poor fashion that I had Utah fans defend me.
Yeah, it was.
That's crazy, right? So.
Is it the one you were blocked from? Is it that tweet? Was that?
That was one of them. Oh, okay. There were a few. Yeah. I do that. People yell at me. It's okay. I'm all right with it. I think I'm pretty reasonable, but I guess I don't know.
So my question in looking at this, if you're the Big 12, so you said you're not expanding, but possibly that's a smokescreen. Is there? And we've all talked about, what if the ACC breaks up? Obviously, some of those schools won't end up in the Big 10 or the SEC. So there's a good chance that, the Big 12 could go in and make a case for bringing some of those schools in. Do we think that there is a limit to just how big the Big 12 will get? Or are we in the day and age where if there's value, you take them? And if so, because obviously I know, Coos, from your point of view, and I tend to agree, I'm an East Coast guy, having more of an East Coast presence to make traveling easier for the East Coast teams now that the West Coast is built out makes a lot of sense. So would adding these Northwest schools say, oh, now we're just taking spots away from the ACC schools potentially adding, or are we just, hey, let's just keep going? Because it looks like that's what the Big Ten's doing.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously have been on record saying I think they should take more Eastern schools. I mean, obviously there's none to take right now that bring value. I don't guess unless they think UConn does, which is a whole nother show.
Yeah.
But, I think if you continue to just keep adding these Western schools and adding them, you're alienating your 3 Eastern schools every time you do that.
I agree.
Opinion. And as a West Virginia fan, we've already been alienated for over a decade, and we were okay with it for a while because the Big 12 threw us that lifeline, right? And we were fine with that. We understood it. We took it. But now we've been a longstanding member of the league now for over a decade. We've stuck through, we've stood by them. We've helped them grow, whatever. I feel like we've been a good member. Now I feel like they should throw us a bone, so to speak, and get us some more Eastern teams. Now, obviously there has to be some available. I get all that, but at some point, man, you got to look at this and go, this travel is just ridiculous.
Yes.
And I'm not signing up for this anymore. You know what I mean? So I don't know.
Yeah, I agree 100% with what Koo said. I think that if you had a choice, you'd take 4 ACC schools, and we know what those schools are already. If we get Virginia Tech, Pittsburgh, Louisville, and
NC State,
and NC State, or Georgia Tech, or anybody else, with the Big 12 would be at 22 teams. And how strong would they be then? Even if you lost schools later, they'd still be a very vital conference. I think that would be fantastic. That would be 20 teams. If they brought in Washington State and Oregon State, it would take them to 22. Yeah. But the one thing I did forget, also in the timeline, I need to make a note of this, is one of the things Brett Yormark was on record for an entire year was he wants the Pacific time zone in the Big 12 conference. Right now, it's not. It only half the year. Only half the year does he have the Arizona schools.
Right.
So,
but he's plenty stated in press conferences that he now has it. So to him, I guess.
Yeah, it's gone back and forth. His first comments wasn't that I've got the Pacific time zone. That came out in later press conferences. He never said that he didn't want any other schools out on the West Coast just to get that time zone. I'm just bringing it up. I'm not.
I'm not going to argue the fact he never said he didn't want more. I don't know that it's him. I think he would grow to 50 teams if he had the chance.
Right. Maybe.
I think it's the presidents and the ADs that are like, pump the brakes a bit here. Let's slow down a little bit. He's like,
and there's the voting block thing too, Coos. Right. The voting blocks.
Right. And that's something that concerns me. A lot of people think I'm, wrong.
No, you're exactly right.
Wrong, but to me, it's a concern.
I
mean, do you want to be the Pac 2.0 or do you want to be the Big 12? I mean, you got to make a decision.
No. Yep, I agree with you 100%. I think the voting block is a concern. Although at this point, I don't think Washington State and Oregon State are loyal to any of the 4 schools that left them to dry.
And that's a great point.
They want to burn those 4 schools as far as they're concerned. They would be more loyal to BYU and West Virginia before they would do anything to help Colorado, Utah, Arizona State, because they left them for dead and didn't care. In fact, now Utah fans are, and I'm not going to name anybody in particular, but there are several that actually say you guys are better dead and buried in the Mountain West than being in a conference that's out as strong as we're going to be. And their argument is, are we going to be the AAC 2.0 if we bring in these 2 schools? No, we don't want that. It's garbage. It's funny how they're eating themselves alive. That conference disintegrated because you had so many different opinions and they all hated each other.
I when it comes to the voting block, I know they're not legacy members, but the 4 new schools this year, I'd have to think that they would much rather side with, those legacy 8 members.
They would
before the pack. And so even they might see things a little bit differently in certain issues. I don't know what those might be, but I'd have to think by and large that they would be siding with the schools that decided to take a chance on them.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree with you. There is still the thing though that you could, if you wanted to, it's like Survivor, right? They break into tribes originally and then they whittle down, they break into tribes again. And what's happening now is you could end up with 2 new voting blocks. You have the original 8, if we're throwing in West Virginia into that group, and then you have the new 10, which includes would include 6 Pac-12 schools plus the 4 new schools this year. So technically, that original 8 would again be less than. But honestly, BYU will never, and I say this capital N, never vote against the Big 12. The big BYU will never vote against West Virginia. BYU, because as far as they're concerned, those schools gave them a lifeline, and it's BYU for life, man. It's going to be like that forever.
And West Virginia probably feels the same, and that's probably why they haven't, and maybe that's why they keep accepting all this westward expansion. And I think they trust Brett Yormark and his decision making and what he sees in the future. Because he's not looking for today; he's looking long term. He's looking down 10, 15, 20 years down the road, I think. He's at least looking down the road to 2031 when the new media deal comes up.
Yeah. Or 2026, the new college football playoff negotiation.
That too. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's wild. I remember when West Virginia was added to the Big 12, and I was so bummed because I thought that meant that BYU was never getting in, because that kind of given up on any hope of ever getting into the pack at that point. And so my focus was on Big 12, and that West Virginia goes in. I was like, well, so much for that. And so, I mean, alas, here we are. So, I mean, you never know what'll happen down the road. But so going back to Gonzaga, if the Big 12, if this isn't just a bargaining chip, if this is legitimate and they're pushing forward and this picks up steam and they want to add Gonzaga, how would this impact the likelihood of adding those other two schools? Does that say, oh, now that's officially us in the pack or in the Pacific time zone and we're in the Pacific Northwest, we're good? Or does that make it more likely like, hey, let's get some more travel partners for Gonzaga and bring these two schools in?
My opinion, if you're adding Gonzaga alone, it makes absolutely zero sense.
I agree.
So who comes with?
Maybe then if they do add Gonzaga, I'll probably start. Let me back up a minute. I said earlier on, I don't think adding Oregon State, Washington State is totally out of the equation. I just don't. I don't think it's the more likely scenario. But if they bring Gonzaga in, then I'll probably be like, okay, something's up here, right? Because I don't think it makes any sense to bring them and leave them on an island up there by themselves.
Right.
Because, I mean, Nathan, you can answer this. Is BYU or Utah close enough to be a travel partner for them?
Yeah, we can get up there. It's roughly about 12 hours.
Wow.
It's a nice drive, but yeah, it's a long way away.
Wow.
So
that's not really, to me, that's not close enough to be a travel partner.
It isn't. No, they've become really good competitors in the West Coast Conference. They actually respect each other a lot. The games at BYU and up in Spokane have been amazing. But yeah, the distance, I mean, you're still talking an hour and a half flight.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're bringing Gonzaga, look, we heard this Gonzaga news this morning. I just started to formulate my thoughts, and then this negotiation thing came out about the Pac-2 this evening. I agree with Kuz. Them by themselves makes zero sense. I haven't heard one person saying, yeah, let's do that. It would only be if there were other people that were coming with them.
Yeah. And then, so Nathan Campbell, he's had a few comments that I've just now noticed. Sorry about that. I'll even put it up here, but he's asking if ultimately we're moving to an A3 model. And so if that is the case, as we talked about a lot this summer on a lot of different shows, that was in the conversation. Does adding the Washington State and Oregon State help the Big 12 in that model, go to that in terms of strengthening? And we have to assume that the other two conferences are growing as well. Does that help them in achieving that?
I don't know. That's a tough question. I mean, Oregon State and Washington State are good brands as far as, they fit culturally with the Big 12, I think. Washington State gets really good TV ratings, I have found. Surprisingly, I didn't think that at first, but once you dig into the numbers, they actually do pretty well.
Yeah.
But they're not, they don't really strengthen the Big 12 from a brand perspective. They're basically just, we still won't have that blue blood or that top brand that these other conferences have, right? So I don't know how much adding them, no offense to my Oregon State, Washington State folks out there, I just don't know how much adding them helps us, just to be frank.
I don't think it helps at all. I don't think that is even, it's not about helping the Big 12. If those two schools come in, it's part of a reclamation project to end the Pac-2, it doesn't have anything to do with making the Big 12 stronger.
Yeah, and as a Big 12 guy, I'm not for charity projects here. You need to do what's best for the Big 12. And if those two spots need to be saved for Pitt and Virginia Tech or North Carolina State or Duke, if you're talking basketball, I think that's the route you go. But that's just me.
Yeah, it's not all football. I mean, we're talking about football because it's the driver of the money, but there's still 10% that is basketball. And they both, I mean, Oregon State's been to the Final Four in the last 2 years. So they bring brands that will travel. But at the end of the day, you mentioned what going to an A3, which is what Nathan mentioned. That's what we talked about on my show. I think Kuz talked about it a little bit. The A3 would only happen if the ACC blew up.
Yeah.
So right now we're looking at A4. It's going to be A4 for a while. The ACC is even though they did it in a kind of skeevy way, when they brought in California and Stanford and SMU, it bought them some time, but it did not make them more healthy, because immediately what happened, North Carolina, Florida State, and Clemson came out, and not only did they vote against them, which has never happened, that those votes aren't always unanimous, but they actually put out news releases saying, hey, look, we're going to find a way. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. So, there's this idea that you go to an A3 +1. The +1 would be what's left over of the ACC merges with maybe a few other schools in sort of a private school model. That's not my idea. That's something Immaculate's brought up, and I think it has some merit, but it's not what I think anybody is looking at. I think if it ends up with that, it'll probably be because that's who's left, because Notre Dame's trying to create their own conference, which they very well could do.
So, yeah, thank you. And, we're coming up on a time here. We got to.
Right. Yeah. Kuz has got to go.
Wow. Mind blown here.
Yeah, no. So I don't want to make him late, but he's got other commitments. But
sure,
guys, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a good discussion. Everybody in the comments, let us know if you think that Washington State and Oregon State are going to end up in the Big 12 or not. I'm really curious because it's one I'm still on the fence on. I think it could happen, but and then gents, let us know where can everybody follow you and catch your content. Kuz?
You can find me on YouTube at Kuz's Corner, where I cover West Virginia, obviously, if you can't tell. And then I'm on Twitter at Kuz206, and it's spelled COUZ206. I also have a basketball channel for those who want to keep up with West Virginia basketball. It's called Hoops from the Hills. I actually have a partner on that channel. We do a lot of content together named Mountaineer Paul Talks Football, or Mountaineer Paul. He has a channel called Mountaineer Paul Talks Football as well. But we have Hoops from the Hills together if you want to, if you're interested in that too. Actually just put a video out today regarding the Gonzaga conversation if you guys want to go check it out. So, but yeah, that's the two places you can find me at. I am on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok as well, but I'm not on there. I'm not as active on there. So YouTube and Twitter is the two places to find me the easiest.
Go check him out. Great stuff, top shelf stuff. So, and Bomber, where can everyone find you?
My Twitter handles are right underneath me right there. Just follow me on Twitter. That you'll always get notifications of my shows. Or you can go to YouTube, and I have a Big 12 Mafia page. Just search Big 12 Mafia, it'll pop up. Or the Holy Rivals, we're starting up that one now as its own channel. So either one, you can find me on both. And we're trying to do the same thing. I'm trying to copy what Kuz has been doing much longer than I have, and that's just getting out content that people enjoy.
Trevor, before I go, I would be remiss if I didn't thank you for bringing me on, man. This has been fun.
Right. Absolutely.
This has been a dream come true, guys. So thank you so much. And we'll keep the conversation going, and everyone have a good night. And please don't forget to like and subscribe here as well. Almost forgot to plug myself. So
absolutely.
Anyway. All right. Thanks, guys. And we will see you around.
Okay. We'll see you later. Thanks again, Trevor. See you, Kuz.
Bye.
Bye-bye.